to order the April 13th meeting of the Cary Town Council. And at this time, I'll recognize Councilmember Johnson for our ceremonial opening.
Thank you, Mayor. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and I'm glad to bring some awareness to this topic. It's very near and dear to me. During Child Abuse Prevention Month, here in Wake County, our Child Welfare Division is trying to remind residents that everyone has a role in preventing child abuse and neglect. During the month of April, child welfare staff, they're emphasizing the necessity for communities like ours to work together. We want to promote social and emotional well-being for all children and families through an outreach campaign, and it includes several local events. On April 5th, Town Clerk Jenny Johnson and Deputy Clerk Julie Clifton and I put out commemorative pinwheels, and we delivered a proclamation acknowledging April as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Cary on behalf of the Mayor and Council. We presented it to the staff, and they're amazing, at Western Health and Human Services Center. I'm saying that correctly because that's what it's called. And that's right here at 111 James Jackson Avenue, which I'm sad to say I didn't know until I got there. So I wanted to share that information for those of you that, like me, did not know we have this right here in Cary. You may see the blue pinwheels around Cary. You see it on my lapel pin here. Those pinwheels represent the carefree way a childhood should be. And there is a second pinwheel ceremony at the First Baptist Church in downtown Cary. That's on April 24th at 11 a.m. Love to see some folks join us. And if you're not sure what your first step might be, if you want to be part of the solution to child abuse and child neglect, here's some ideas. Donate money. That's always a really great first step and really necessary. You can also donate your time, which is also incredibly important. There's a lot of organizations that support children and their families. When you need to prevent child abuse, the factors that influence a child's experience really include a lot more than what you typically would think, like tempers and such, right? There's a whole host of social factors that need to be addressed, and anything you can do to support families is a step towards preventing child abuse. You can also volunteer to mentor. You can consider becoming a volunteer guardian ad litem, something that I'm very passionate about, and if anybody ever has any questions, ask me. And perhaps you can, and I'm going to say this 1,000 times while I'm in office, perhaps you can help and be an adult who cares about a teen that's aging out of foster care. That's a community that really needs some support. If you're interested in getting involved, the place to go is Western Health and Human Services Center right here in Cary on James Jackson Avenue, just so that you all remember that. And now let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, and for all the work you do.
Glad to. Thank you.
First order of business is to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We are now at recognitions, reports, and presentations for tonight's meeting. And our first presentation is a pretty special one. It's the 35th anniversary of our sister cities. And we have visitors all the way from La Touquet, France, visiting with us here this evening. And so at this time, I'll invite Mee Hall Lynch to meet me at the podium along with some of our guests.
Bonjour.
Welcome to Cary, North Carolina. We're so glad that you're here. I've been to La Touquet, beautiful place. Love my visit there. I'm glad you're here, and I hope you will enjoy your visit here. We're celebrating tonight a big milestone, 35 years of our Sister City program. And 35 years ago, it wasn't that cool to have a Sister Cities program, and to now, it's really cool. And a lot of that has to do with one of our council members who's been our liaison to Sister Cities for 34 of those 35 years, Jack Smith. Jack, thank you for doing this for so many years. In our community, the Sister Cities program promotes cultural exchange and mutual understanding between communities and around the world, and they build relationships. I hosted many students over the years. The first student I hosted from Le Touquet was in the early 2000s, and I think she has children almost your age now. So it's really special, those relationships that are built in the traveling from France to here and vice versa. And I hope you build those relationships while you're here. It's a very special time, not only for you, but for us as well. To Mihal, thank you for you and the board for the volunteers, dedicated service, countless hours, everything that you've done, hosting delegations, promoting cultural exchange. I could go on and on and on.
Please do.
But I'll run out. In honor of this special occasion, this anniversary, we have a small gift, a small token of our appreciation, hopefully something to remember this occasion by.
Thank you.
And what we have here is a watercolor of the Sister Cities directional sign, which is right outside of Town Hall campus. So for those watching, streaming or online somewhere, if you want to see this sign for real, it's just outside of Town Hall. So why don't we give everybody a show, Mihal? All right, that one's yours.
Thank you very much.
All of our students this year, by the way, these students are training in culinary arts right now. They do multiple things, but while they're here, they're training in culinary arts. I've seen the culinary school in Le Touquet, very impressive. And for the first time, I think it's the first time, they're all located here in Cary, which is very special, and we're very proud of that. So thank you for being here in Cary. So Mihal, it's now time for you to say a few words.
Very good, sir. Thank you very much, Mayor. If I may. Thank you so much for acknowledging the 35th anniversary. It means a great deal. I so much appreciate what you said about our efforts. It is a continual effort. We are a small but dedicated board. We are increasing, I would say, in our skills in what we do and in reinventing how we do it. Briefly, Mayor and Council, Cary Sister Cities, on behalf of the town, continually strives to bring meaningful expression to the town's ethos of diversity and inclusion through its participation in the International Sister Cities programme. That programme, based on friendship and community, creates a dynamic for citizen diplomacy to enable our distant communities build and strengthen connections of our true commonalities as a global village. As a poet said, there are no strangers here, only friends who have yet to meet. That quote, of course, is a tribute either to the early 20th century poet, Irish poet, William Butler Yeats, or his good friend Jack Smith. On behalf of our board, I would like to acknowledge our partnership in this particular programme with Le Touquet, through Wake Tech, and in particular Mr. Jeff Hadley, who has worked tirelessly on this programme for 31 years and always envisioned it being centred on Cary restaurants and businesses, and which we have actually achieved this year, as Mayor said, for the first time, due in no small measure to amazing efforts on behalf of our board, and this year with the support and help of the Cary Chamber of Commerce, and of course those downtown businesses who provide work placements for our visiting students. And whilst we at Cary Sister Cities facilitate this and our various other programmes, it is the community involvement that makes real that spirit of friendship and citizen diplomacy. And in this instance, it is the host families who are also with us here tonight who make that real. And thank you to those host families who are here tonight as well. Please stand if you're present. Some are. Thank you again, Mayor. And I know our students, with their amazing chaperone, one of my few French words, have something prepared that they're going to present themselves. And at the risk of destroying international relations, I'm going to have a go at some pronunciations of the French students. And so we have Alexis Daucher, Leo Lédé, Raphaël de Olivier, Louis Tisserand, Jade Fameau, Jeanne Leloup, Eve Florentine, Lola Chorine, Camille Fierce, Florent Comble, and De Bruyne Benoit. And that's all I'm going to say. I would like to hand over to the appointed French students, apologies, to take the mic and say some words. Thank you, Mayor.
So, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. So, we are 9 students from the Lycée Hôtelier du Touquet, which is a sister city of Cary, a love story. So we are here for 5 weeks for our internship. We want to thank you for this welcoming in this wonderful city, which was warm and pleasant. A great thanks to the Cary City to welcome us and let us do our internship in your homes.
We would like to thank our host family for welcoming us, taking care of us, and let us discover this city full of resources. To finish, thanks to King George, Jeff Hadley, Pamela Off, and Michael Lynch for organizing this trip for us. We are very grateful and we are excited to discover even more of your magnificent city.
Oh, well done.
Thank you.
It's not often you get to see Jack Smith smile from ear to ear. He's loving it. What a great time. Okay, we move to our next item in reports and recognitions, and that's the town manager's update, and I'll call on Mr. Stiegel at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Assistant Manager Shelley Kern and I attended the Wake County Managers Meeting. Remind the council, every town manager or city manager in Wake County meets on a bi-monthly basis to discuss issues of common interest. And so there were several this time. First and foremost, Wake County gave us an update on their food security plan. And I just think it's important for all of us that don't have to worry about where our next meal is to just stop and appreciate the blessing that is. And so I know we're very thankful that Wake County is working on coordinating efforts throughout the county to make sure that nobody in Wake County has to experience that moment. One thing that we learned through that is just how much donated food goes to waste, or just food in general, every day, every week in the county, and really trying to limit that number as much as possible. And although the scope of that problem is maybe not as large in Cary as it is in other parts of the county, we really want to play a very meaningful role in helping with that because we have the resources to do that. So I pledge the council's support for that. And we have Alyssa Campo-Bowman, who's a relatively new staff member that has a lot of expertise in this, and she's our staff coordinator for that. There's quite a problem, I guess, for the school system in Wake County with the number of fire alarm calls that are related to vaping going on in the high schools. And so there's no easy answer for that. And as the council may be aware, after so many calls where there's not an actual fire, fines start to accrue. And so the school system is going to be approaching all of the communities asking for some sort of coordinated plan, recognizing that there's no really easy answer here, because if there's a call, we're going to come. So wish us well on that. The next, Triangle J Council of Government is going through a branding initiative, and they have made the decision to change their name from Triangle J Council of Government to the Central Pines Regional Council. And yeah, so that decision's been made. We're not being asked to opine on it, which is good. I didn't want to go through another branding exercise, especially on behalf of somebody else. So, but we do certainly. They provided good reasons on the reason to kind of mark themselves a little bit differently. Jennifer plays a key role with Central Pines now, and so we'll be helping them any way we can with that initiative. And then finally, Wake County gave us an update on their 1 year of the non-discrimination ordinance being passed in Wake County, and hasn't been around long enough to truly derive any conclusions from this, but very, very little sustained cases of discrimination occurring in Wake County as far as that system. And so I believe the number was five cases for the entire year for Wake County. Quite a few calls, but the actual cases referred to Campbell University has been 5 for the year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Stegall.
Thank you.
We next go to Public Speaks Out. We've included instructions for speaking at this forum online and on the printed agenda. There were 3 opportunities to participate in Public Speaks Out through written comments, calling in, or attending here in person tonight. And if you are here in person and would like to speak at Public Speaks Out, I would ask that you sit in the rows to my right that are lit right now, the first 2 or 3 rows there. Keep in mind that Public Speaks Out speakers have 3 minutes each for their comments. Speakers may speak on any topic that's not a public hearing, and that's to your benefit. Because at a public hearing, you get more time. The 3-minute time limit will be enforced. There's a timer on the podium. Starts off with a green light. When 30 seconds remain, it'll turn to a yellow light. And when it flashes red, that means your time has expired, and I will interrupt you at that point, not trying to be rude, but to be fair to all of our speakers. I thank everyone in the audience for respecting that this is a business meeting. Please do not applaud, make remarks from your seat, or anything else that may distract from the meeting. So before I open Public Speaks Out, I have one more report recognition that I failed to do, and that's to recognize Ryan Eads as our appointment to Friends of the Page Walker. And so sorry I skipped that, Ryan. We look forward to your work on that, and look forward to all the information you bring back to us.
Will do, thank you.
All right, getting back to Public Speaks Out, now is the time for Public Speaks Out, and I'll invite our first speaker forward. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Hey, Mayor, we had no registered speakers or written comments.
Okay. No call-in speakers?
No call-in speakers.
No online printed?
No, there may be some in the audience.
So anyone here that would like to speak at Public Speaks Out that is not speaking at a public hearing, now's the time to come forward. Anyone speaking at Public Speaks Out? Seeing no one, we'll move on. And our next item is the consent agenda, which is item 4, if you're following along. For the benefit of people watching our meeting on TV or streaming, I'll take a moment to review the consent agenda items. Keep in mind that one vote approves all of these items. On the consent agenda, we have 22 REZ 26, which is 4224 and 4300 Green Level West Road, and Statement of Consistency. 22A22, which is the same address, which is the annexation. Fiscal year 2023 Wake Med Soccer Maintenance and Repair Field and Site Projection Bid Award. Interlocal Agreement for provision of water service to 5925 Farm Pond Road in Apex. Ordinance Amendment, electric assisted bicycles. Adjustment to the adopted meeting schedule. So those are the items on the consent agenda, and I would ask if council wanted any of these items pulled for discussion. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
There's a motion.
Second.
And the second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, which takes us to public hearings. Our first public hearing is 22 REZ 08. Keep in mind, same rules apply for public hearings that apply for public speaks out, with one exception. You now have 5 minutes each for your comments. And as I mentioned, our first public hearing is the Ariel Center rezoning. Senior Housing and Planner Heather Wheelhan will introduce the item, and council will not take action on this rezoning. Instead, it's going to go to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation. It will come back to council at a future date for our decision. Ms. Wheelan.
Thank you. And good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request to rezone 11 properties totaling approximately 75 acres off Airport Boulevard from general commercial conditional use, and office and institutional to office research and development conditional use, with zoning conditions that include limiting development of the site to a maximum of 708 square feet. The assemblage is just west of I-40, about 1.5 miles southwest of RDU. About half of the 75 acres is occupied by 1- and 2-story office buildings. The other half of the assemblage is undeveloped. Cary's GIS maps indicate potential streams on the southern edge of the site. Field determination of such features is required at the time of development plan review. Ariel Center Parkway is currently a 2-lane road without pedestrian or bike facilities. A landscape median exists near the entrance to the office park, and then transitions into a 2-lane street with no median. Ariel Center is designated as a collector with future cross-section of 3 lanes, including curb and gutter, with 5-foot sidewalk on both sides and 14-foot bike lanes in both directions. It is worth noting here that Wake County owns the undeveloped land surrounding this assemblage to the south, and as you saw on the prior slide, it is entirely in floodplain, so a public infrastructure project would likely be required to make that road connection east to Gateway Center Boulevard. There is no current or planned Go Cary transit service in the immediate vicinity of the subject property. However, the Go Triangle routes 100 and 105 are in the area. The Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan does not propose any parks or greenways within or adjacent to the site. The proposed Aviation Parkway Streetside Trail is located approximately 1 mile southeast of the site, which will ultimately connect to the Crabtree Creek Greenway around Lake Crabtree. The town of Morrisville's Parks, Greenways, and Sidewalks map shows the Stirrup Iron Creek Greenway extending along the stream corridor adjacent to the western side of the site, just beyond Cary's ETJ. This greenway is planned to connect to the future Aviation Parkway Streetside Trail, the proposed extension of the Crabtree Creek Greenway, and to a multi-use trail on Airport Boulevard. Morrisville will be conducting a feasibility study for this section of the Greenway and is coordinating with Cary on anticipated designs, easement needs, and opportunities for connection. The site is currently zoned general commercial conditional use, and office and institutional. The site is located in the Airport Overlay District. The applicant is proposing to rezone to office research and development conditional use, with the airport overlay to remain, and zoning conditions that include limiting development of the site to a maximum of 708 square feet and limiting medical office to 50,000 square feet. Of the uses normally permitted in the office research and development district, the applicant's proposal prohibits these 35. 18 of these, noted here with an asterisk, including residential and assembly uses, are already prohibited by the airport overlay. Uses remaining then as permitted on this site would include those on this list, such as government office, transportation facility, hotel motel, adult business, research laboratory, and wholesale establishments. The Future Growth Framework map designates the subject site with the Business Industrial Park Development category. The Cary Community Plan defines this designation as traditional suburban office and industrial parks with uses such as offices, research and development facilities, light industrial and manufacturing, and warehousing distribution. Office Research and Development District is noted as an appropriate zoning within this designation. In staff's preliminary analysis, we found that Cary Community Plan work and shape chapters are most relevant. The proposed rezoning would support the locational needs of new and expanding firms and reserve office park areas for office, research, and industrial uses. In terms of shape, the proposed rezoning could facilitate both redevelopment and infill. Additionally, allowing compatible uses within existing office areas helps provide appropriate transitions and opportunity for these non-residential uses. Notice of this public hearing was mailed to property owners within 800 feet of the subject site, and this exceeds the state's and Cary's LDO requirements. We held a neighborhood meeting in conjunction with the applicant on May 4th. There were no citizens in attendance, and since that time, we have not received any calls or emails regarding this case. And that concludes my presentation this evening. Following the applicant's remarks, I will be available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Whelan. And we welcome Mr. Barron to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group. Happy to be here on behalf of Spectrum Properties, who is working towards essentially re-envisioning the uses that are permitted within Ariel Center, primarily for one reason alone. They approached me really at the beginning of the pandemic and expressed an interest in being able to develop more laboratory and life science uses within Ariel Center. That's an area that during the pandemic we saw a significant spike in. As you all are aware, the town of Cary has tremendous assets in terms of Class A office space, as well as kind of traditional suburban office parks. Doesn't have a real collection of opportunity to be able to recruit laboratory and life science businesses. What we determined based upon the existing zoning is that general commercial and O&I really don't fit those uses very well. You can do some lab space within O&I and general commercial. You just can't do as much as we would like to see. So ultimately, the purpose behind this rezoning is to be able to entitle all of Ariel Center as well as the unbuilt portions for additional lab space and life science uses. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have until Ms. Wheelahan's presentation. I didn't realize that adult business was still one of the permitted uses. I'm happy to prohibit that one after the public hearing. But thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Barron.
That's not life science?
Okay, now's the time for public hearing 22REZ08 Ariel Center Spectrum. And I'll call on the town clerk for any written comments or call-in or registered speakers.
No written comments nor requests to speak.
Okay. If you're in the audience and you'd like to speak at this public hearing, now's your time, and I would invite the first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions or comments. Don's already made a good comment. This will go to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation, and we will see this at a future date. Thank you, Ms. Whelan.
Thank you.
Our next public hearing is 5.2, which is Act 29 Ordinance Amendments, Technical and Minor. Assistant Planning Director Katie Dry will introduce the item. Council will not take action on this item this evening. It will be referred to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation, and will return to us at a future date. Ms. Dry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For your consideration tonight are Act 29 amendments to the Town Code, Land Development Ordinance, and Community Appearance Manual. With Act amendments, we bring forward two types of amendments. Some are implementing policy or plan initiatives, such as the recently adopted Act 25 amendments for stormwater regulations. Others are technical and minor in nature, which are intended to make updates and clarifications without changing town policy or regulatory intent. So the amendments we're proposing tonight with Act 29 are within the technical and minor category in nature, and they do not change any town policy or regulatory intent. So with that, the amendments within Act 29 include a proposal to update the town code regarding Historic Preservation Commission, miscellaneous LDO updates, clarifications, and corrections, and updates to the Community Appearance Manual, all that are minor in nature. And I'll provide a brief overview of each. First, under Town Code, it updates and aligns the description of HPC membership qualifications with the exact wording in the state statutes. It also ratifies text allowing the Town Council in its discretion to appoint an alternate member. Under item B, the first item is to remove references throughout the LDO to obsolete planning and design documents and replace them with references to our most recently adopted documents. This also reinforces that Cary's official zoning map is made up of the base zoning map and the zoning overlay map. This also clarifies existing town center related terminology and standards. These amendments include clarifying standards for expansion and reuse of non-conforming residential uses in the town center, correct the date when detached residential uses in some town center subdistricts became non-conforming, reiterate that non-conforming residential uses once converted to a conforming use can be converted or cannot be converted back to a residential use. It replaces the terminology for front setback with roadway setback to be consistent with terminology found in the LDO dimensional tables. It also removes a note from a table which is no longer relevant due to a previous amendment. This also updates definitions and removes obsolete and unneeded definitions from the ordinance. It will clarify that when an existing legally permitted single-unit detached dwelling encroaches into a currently required setback, a building permit may be issued for an alteration or an expansion of that dwelling as long as it does not increase the existing encroachment. And finally, staff proposes to update or have minor corrections to Cary's Community Appearance Manual to align vegetation documentation requirements with the LDO, resolve text inconsistencies and conflicts, clean up graphics, annotations, and references to other documents, align planting standards for stormwater control measures with state requirements, correct inadvertent errors made with earlier updates, and make minor and text corrections and clarifications. So this concludes my presentation. Following the public hearing, I'm available for any of your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dry. So now is the time for the public hearing for Act 29 ordinance amendments, and I'm going to call on our clerk once again to let us know about any call-in speakers, registered speakers, or any written comments.
No written comments nor requests to speak.
Okay. Now's the time for anyone in attendance, if you would like to speak at this public hearing, to come forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. We'll send it to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation. Unless council members have questions or comments before we do that? All right, it's on its way. Ms. Dry, thank you.
Thank you.
Our third public hearing is fiscal year 2023-2024 Community Development Block Grants, or we call them CDBG, Annual Action Plan and Funding Recommendation. And for this, I'm going to call on the Director of Housing and Community Projects, Morgan Manza, who will present this item, and no action is needed this evening. Ms. Manza.
Thank you so much, and good evening, Council. Tonight's public hearing is for the fiscal year 2024 Community Development Block Grant, Annual Action Plan, and Funding Recommendations. This is an important opportunity for our residents to offer feedback on Cary's housing and community development needs as relates to our Annual Action Plan for CDBG funding. The CDBG program provides funds to support viable communities through projects that enable high-quality housing and a suitable living environment for lower-income families. We've been recipients of CDBG funds for close to 15 years and are grateful for the opportunity to invest in organizations and activities that help to make Cary an incredible place to live. HUD has recently announced that Cary is expected to receive $651,145 for the upcoming fiscal year. The public comment period began on March 29th and will conclude on May 1st. Thus far, we've hosted one public meeting at the Taylor Family YMCA, as well as focus groups with local stakeholders. From those meetings, staff received public comments focused on 3 areas: more funding for affordable housing to increase production and preserve existing affordable units, housing near transit, especially in connection to job centers, and homeless prevention programs to help people without stable housing or at risk of eviction. We will collect comments from tonight's public hearing and continue to solicit input from the community until the close of the public comment period. Here is a snapshot of where we are in the CDBG Annual Action Plan timeline. We launched this process of collecting housing and community development data in March, and as you can see, we have increased opportunities for public input to foster equity and accessibility in this planning process. While this is a mandatory public process for CDBG, as a staff report attachment, we also provided you with a comprehensive list of all eligible projects received during this grant cycle. As you may recall, you all chose to set aside American Rescue Plan Act dollars for housing affordability and nonprofits. We still have that funding available, along with general Cary funds that can be applied to the non-CDBG eligible projects. Following tonight's public hearing, staff will host one final public meeting to solicit public input from residents and local stakeholders. Once the public comment period closes on May 1st, all feedback will be incorporated into the annual action plan and fiscal year 2024 funding recommendations. The annual action plan will return to you, Town Council, in May for final action. When I return to you next month, you may allocate non-CDBG funds as well, or elect to review the non-CDBG proposals at a future date. So at this time, the public may comment on the fiscal year 2024 CDBG Annual Action Plan and funding recommendations. Following the public hearing, staff are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Manta. So now's the time for the public hearing for fiscal year 2023-2024 CDBG Annual Action Plan and funding recommendations, and I'll call on our clerk to read any written comments, call on any registered speakers or call-in speakers.
We had no written comments. We did have one registered speaker, Farah of the Caring Place Properties Committee.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Farah Pushayeti. I'm the volunteer for the 5 years at the Cary Place, the only nonprofit organization that provides temporary housing for the city of Cary. In the past 30 years, we've been going strong with your support, and we've been giving the temporary housing for the 500 residents of the Cary. And with your help, we were able to buy 13 homes, some condos, some duplexes, some single homes. And of course, they were not brand new, so they need some works, and we try to maintain it with the support of wonderful volunteers that we have. We have amazing contractors, realtors, managers that helping us to maintain these homes. At the Cary Place, we provide 16 weeks of the temporary homes. We give wonderful services, teach these amazing residents as far as how they can improve their income, how can they maintain their job. Basically, these are low-income homes, and they just need some guidance. They have some of them that have some mental issues. We support them. We have a youth program that we take care of them, and then we help them go through the transition of not being homeless, provide these temporary homes, and then put them in the permanent housing. With your help, again, we were able to get these homes, but now it's time for some of these homes to have some maintenance issues that we have. We need to take care of them, and we are very particular as far as where we put our residents. We want to make sure they are in the safe environment, they are in good environment. Some of our homes, they're like a HVAC system is due for repairs, and some of you know it costs like between $8,000 to $12,000 for each of them. Some roofing, some new water heater, maintaining the pest control, some of the foundation, the plumbing, they're a little bit old, so we need to maintain them. So even though we have volunteers, we need some money. And we did apply for the CDBG for 100 grand, and with your support and approval, we can maintain this mission that is going for 30 years for the Cary. And I just want to say on behalf of the Cary Place, we greatly appreciate your council, your mayor, and the staff for the support that we're doing for our residents. And I think we can go strong, but we need your help, and hopefully we can get approval for the CDBG. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No additional speakers.
At this time, I would invite anybody in the audience that would like to speak at this public hearing. Anyone at all? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions or comments.
I don't have any. The only comment I would make, and I'd like to thank Morgan for all of her hard work, the $9 million from the 2022 budget for affordable housing with healthy homes, Cary, and all the money we're getting is just amazing, and you're really doing Cary and all of our citizens a great service by helping people stay in their homes. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I second that.
Anyone else?
I had one quick question. Can you tell me how that $651K for 2024 compares to prior years as far as the CDBG grants?
Yes, so it is between 650 every year, except for during the pandemic. They provided an additional $1 million due to increased need through the pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I'll close this public hearing and we will see this at a future meeting. Right?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ms. Manzo. We now move to our next public hearing, 21 REZ 12, Veritas at Green Level Destination Center, PDP. Land Development and Special Projects Manager Rob Wilson will introduce the item. Council will not take action on this rezoning tonight. It will be referred to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation, and will return to Council at a future meeting for action. Mr. Wilson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Veritas is a proposal to rezone 5 properties totaling approximately 30 acres on Green Level West Road. The Veritas site is located on the south side of Green Level West Road between NC 540 to the east and Green Level Church Road to the west. The site is adjacent to 2 other active rezonings. To the east, Duke Health is seeking a rezoning to add approximately 12 acres to their existing 70-acre site, to increase the amount of development on the northern part of their site, and to request additional modifications to the town's development standards. To the north, Belcanto is proposing a rezoning for a mixed-use development focusing predominantly on multifamily housing on their 35-acre site. Veritas is the first of these proposed rezonings to reach Council for a public hearing. The site is located in the Green Level Special Planning Area, which is broken into 5 sub-areas. Veritas is located in the Green Level Destination Center next to the intersection of Green Level West Road and NC 540. Per the Imagine Cary Community Plan, destination centers are Cary's premier mixed-use centers that include an integrated mix of commercial, office, and residential uses, arranged in a walkable pattern with an active pedestrian realm where buildings front on streets. Destination centers are also intended to contain the greatest development intensities found in Cary. The Veritas site is currently located outside of Cary's corporate limits and ETJ, and is zoned Wake County Residential 40 watershed. Annexation will be required prior to rezoning. This evening's public hearing is for the rezoning proposal only, and Council will see the annexation at a later date. The site is proposed to be rezoned to Mixed Use District, or MXD, with a preliminary development plan and design guidebook. The site would also be rezoned with the Mixed Use Overlay District and the Watershed Protection Overlay District. The property's southern boundary runs along the White Oak Creek corridor. Additionally, Cary's GIS maps indicate potential streams and jurisdictional features on the site. Field determination of such features is required at time of development plan review. The White Oak Greenway runs along the southern portion of the site as it extends from the American Tobacco Trail to Bond Park. As part of the proposed rezoning, the applicant is proposing to provide 3 connections to the Greenway. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan also shows a future town park on town-owned land to the south on the other side of White Oak Creek. Green Level West Road is currently a 2-lane road with varying right-of-way. The first phase of the Duke Health site has widened the portion of the corridor closest to NC 540 and has installed sidewalks on the north side of the road. Per Cary's planned roadway widths map, Green Level West will ultimately be a 4-lane thoroughfare with a landscape median. There are currently no fixed route transit facilities in the Green Level Destination Center. The closest fixed route service is currently 1.25 miles away at the intersection of NC 55 and High House Road. While there are no immediate plans for fixed route transit in the vicinity of the subject property, the applicant has included a condition to provide accommodations for transit stops for future service locations at the time of development plan review. There are presently overhead utility lines along the subject site's frontage on Green Level West Road. Per the LDO, all utility lines are required to be installed underground unless such placement is prohibited. Duke Energy has historically indicated that they are not able to bury segments of line underground when they're less than 1,000 feet in length. With this site's approximately 980 feet of frontage and the anticipation of the destination center being a very urban setting, staff will coordinate with Duke Energy and the developer regarding this issue when detailed plans for utility installation are prepared during the development plan review process. Viridis has a preliminary development plan that identifies access and circulation for the site, permitted land uses and densities, and includes many other zoning conditions. Regarding access and circulation, Viridis proposes to provide the southern leg, identified here as Street A in red. This will be the first leg to a signalized full movement intersection west of NC 540. Viridis also proposes to connect to Street E on the adjacent Duke Health site, allowing the southern portion of the Duke Health development to have important access to Street A and a signalized full movement intersection. Viridis proposes to provide this connectivity utilizing a roundabout at the intersection of Street A and Street E. Viridis also utilizes Street E to create a grid light network and provide a western stub so that the remaining portion of the Green Level Destination Center that's west of this assemblage may also connect if it redevelops in the future. Viridis proposes for all three of its development pods along Green Level West Road to be mixed use by committing that each pod will include a minimum of 3,000 square feet of commercial uses on the ground floor. Thus, these pods are all shown in purple, representing that they will be vertically integrated mixed use. In addition to the ground floor commercial, the other proposed uses in these pods do transition from only office and institutional uses in Pod 1, next to the adjacent Duke Health site, to only multifamily in Pod 3 to the west. Pod 2 includes the opportunity to do office, residential, and/or a hotel. All of the buildings in Pods 1, 2, and 3 will be 4 to 8 stories tall. Along the southern portion of the site in Pods 4 and 6, Viridis proposes multifamily residential uses with the option to incorporate commercial uses on the ground floor if desired. All of the buildings in these pods will also be 4 to 8 stories tall. Finally, Pod 5 is proposed for public institutional uses such as open space, picnic shelters, gazebos, rec center, green infrastructure, and/or stormwater management facilities. The applicant has made the commitment that there shall be a playground amenity in Pod 5. Any structures in Pod 5 will be a maximum of 1 story tall. We note that an existing cell tower is located in Pod 5, and while there are not plans to remove it at the present time, there is a condition that no additional freestanding towers can be added. Overall, Viridis proposes to include up to 1,300 multifamily dwelling units, a minimum of 120,000 and a maximum of 225,000 square feet of office and institutional, a minimum of 12,000 and a maximum of 20,000 square feet of commercial, and up to 125 hotel rooms. In addition to providing a grid-like layout, Viridis proposes street cross-sections that exceed Cary standards. As illustrated here, Viridis proposes to be Cary's second destination center development to include separated bike and pedestrian facilities for all three of its streets that function at a collector street level. This cross-section for Street A shows the street tree median separating the bike lane and sidewalk from vehicular traffic and parallel on-street parking. In addition to exceeding street standards, Viridis is also proposing to include open space and/or community gathering space in a 60-foot wide median along Street E, which runs east to west through the site and connects with Street E on the Duke Health site. Active and passive recreational uses are anticipated in the median, with the option to construct small retail jewel box tenant spaces that may be up to 2 stories with 2,500 square feet in size. Just for comparison, the medians on Fenton Main Street are 50 feet wide. And perhaps a more tangible example here in the council chamber would be the distance from the middle door on the left side of the chamber to the middle door on the right side of the chamber is about 60 feet. The proposed rezoning also includes a 29-page design guidebook. The purpose of the guidebook is to identify design elements that exemplify a high level of quality and appearance and make a commitment to incorporate them in the project. The guidebook uses pictures to convey the caliber of design, overall quality of materials, and the type, character, and relationships of design elements that may be used to create a unique and special sense of place. This tool provides the developer with opportunities for flexibility and creativity while guaranteeing a committed level of design and quality to the town. The design guidebook is intended to be used in lieu of the town's LDO and community appearance manual when determining the architectural standards to which development in Veritas must adhere. Compliance shall be determined at the time of development plan or building permit review. The design guidebook includes a very detailed section on architecture and buildings, with definitions and guidance for several key elements, including creative and recognizable entrances, emphasizing building corners, utilizing balconies to add visual interest, using building facades as backdrops for public spaces, stepping building floors back to reduce massing, high-quality materials, varying colors and textures, fenestration and window treatments, and architectural uplighting. Next is parking. Veritas proposes that all of the parking spaces in the development pods shall be structured. Now, there are provisions for on-surface parking in conjunction with early phases of development, but the proposal makes the commitment that as development builds out, 100% of the parking in the development pods shall be indexed. Thus, at build-out, the only surface parking will be the parallel spaces included in the street cross-sections. In addition to committing that all of the parking in development pods will be structured parking, the rezoning also proposes that a minimum of 50% of all parking structures shall be wrapped with buildings. And in instances where facades of parking structures are not wrapped with buildings, the design guidebook includes a section with specific screening options. The guidebook also includes a section on landscape design that discusses designated areas for annuals, the use of decorative fencing and decorative curbs around landscape beds, and the use of living walls in the development. Finally, the guidebook also includes sections on gathering spaces, open spaces, and creating an active public realm, including elements such as internal park spaces, outdoor seating, activated medians, and event spaces. Speaking of open spaces, the plan proposes a minimum of 4.8 acres of open space. This space is distributed between 2.5 acres in Pod 5, 1.5 acres in the median along Street E, and 0.8 acres in the perimeter buffer along the western and southern portions of the site. If the 30-foot streetscape along Green Level West Road were included in this number, it would add another 3/4 of an acre. The PDP also includes 40,000 square feet of community gathering space. In order to ensure that community gathering spaces are dispersed throughout the development and available to everyone, there is a commitment there will be a minimum of 3 such spaces and that a space shall be provided within 300 feet of every primary building entrance. Other zoning conditions included are a condition to provide art at each of the 3 greenway access points, a commitment to incorporate green infrastructure techniques such as bioretention areas, permeable pavement, water harvesting or soil cells into the site stormwater management program, a workforce housing condition reserving 5% of the dwelling units for renters at or below 80% of the area median income for 30 years, and this commitment is for each pod that includes residential. Since a minimum of 3 of the pods will include residential uses, the provided units will be distributed between multiple pods. There are also commitments for a minimum of 50 EV charging stations with criteria to distribute them across the site, utilizing LED lighting for all on-site parking areas, and providing recycling stations at for each development pod. Veritas does propose some alternative standards to the land development ordinance. One such alternative standard has to do with setbacks and streetscapes internal to the development. With all buildings being a minimum of 4 stories, 100% of the parking on development pods being provided in decks, separated bike lanes, street trees, and wider than usual sidewalks, Veritas is seeking to create an urban multimodal environment. To accomplish this goal, the PDP and Design Guidebook proposed to bring buildings up to the street and provide direct engagement with pedestrians. This approach involves removing setbacks and traditional streetscape buffers that push buildings away from pedestrians. In order to create such an active realm, the applicant is proposing to implement a build-to zone. The build-to zone will require the front facades of all buildings and parking structures to be located within 15 feet of the proposed right-of-way. Exceptions are only allowed for community gathering and pedestrian areas, hardscape plazas, landscape beds, and architectural notches incorporated into buildings for visual interest. As part of this approach, the development also makes a commitment to additional amenities such as benches, sitting walls, decorative bike racks, street lamps, and signposts, art, outdoor dining, potted plants and/or landscape beds to enhance the appearance and quality of these areas. Another alternative standard requested by Veritas is the ability to have taller retaining walls and stormwater devices if they're decorative and not visible from a street or greenway. The request is to go up to 10 feet in height as compared to the normal maximum of 6 feet. Speaking of 6 feet, Veritas is also proposing that all walls outside of a stormwater facility would have a maximum height of 6 feet and be constructed with a decorative appearance and finish. In instances where more than one wall is needed, a minimum of a 3-foot deep landscape terrace would be provided between walls. There are a total of 8 alternative standards being requested by the Veritas development. The first would allow grading and replanting of the site's Green Level West Road streetscape. The second would decrease the amount of landscape material in the western buffer while increasing the amount of landscaping in the southern buffer. We already discussed the third request to replace internal setbacks and streetscapes with a build-to zone. The fourth standard would allow up to an 8-foot Duke Energy easement within the Green Level West Road streetscape if the line is placed underground as anticipated. The fifth standard would allow the removal of 2 champion trees that are in necessary street locations. We already discussed 6 and retaining walls. The final 2 alternative standards provide flexibility for ground level retail tenants to have painted signs and an unlimited number of colors on their facades to create diversity and visual interest. In staff's preliminary analysis of the Imagine Cary Community Plan, we found policies in the Live, Work, Shop, Engage, Shape, and Move chapters apply. In regards to the Live chapter, the proposed zoning could expand housing choices for residents by providing a new neighborhood with new options that increase the variety of housing choices in southwestern Cary. The rezoning also includes a workforce housing condition that encourages and supports the provision of affordable dwelling units. Regarding the Work chapter, the rezoning could enhance locational appeal to businesses and workers while also supporting the locational needs of new and expanding firms. Regarding the Shop chapter, the rezoning supports the development of a limited number of destination centers. Regarding the Engage chapter, the rezoning proposes open space, community gathering spaces, and a playground to support a diverse and balanced park and open space system. The proposal also includes 3 connections to the White Oak Greenway, providing citizens with functional and safe access. Regarding the Move chapter, the rezoning proposes a transportation infrastructure that addresses land use context and provides necessary connections to key intersections. The rezoning also proposes multimodal street cross sections that ensure safety of all users and modes. As far as the Shape chapter, the rezoning proposes to support mixed-use development and includes a design guidebook to preserve and maintain Cary's attractive appearance and quality of development. Since the area is within the Green Level Special Planning Area, though, our primary guidance comes from the detailed recommendations in the Special Planning Area section of the Shape chapter. The Green Level Special Planning Area recommends that the Destination Center area includes office, commercial, and residential uses with a focus on employment-oriented uses. Vertical and horizontal mixing of uses is encouraged in this area with building heights of 4 to 7 stories. Structured parking is encouraged and a highly walkable environment with an active public realm is envisioned. Notice of this public hearing was mailed to property owners within 800 feet of the subject site. This exceeds the state's and Cary's LDO requirements. Public hearing signs were also posted along the site's Green Level West Road frontage. A virtual neighborhood meeting was held on this proposal in August of 2021. 3 residents attended and expressed concern about traffic flowing smoothly during the time when Green Level West Road improvements would be under construction. At the meeting, residents also asked if the existing cell tower would remain on the site. The answer is yes. And if there'd be connections to the Greenway. Also, the answer is yes. Finally, residents were curious about the future development potential for the 5 large lot detached homes that are west of Veritas and are also located in the destination center. Since the neighborhood meeting, we've had a couple of conversations with one nearby resident who was interested in knowing who to contact if they were interested in selling their property for redevelopment. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's representative, Jason Barron, is here to address you this evening. Following Mr. Barron's remarks and the public hearing, staff is available for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group. Here on behalf of the Halley Companies, the owner of this site as well as the proposed developer. Here with the Halley Companies is Eric Rifkin. Also joining me are folks from McAdams Company who provided planning and engineering associated with this plan. And as always, Mr. Wilson's done a very thorough job with the staff report as well as the presentation, providing the big picture associated with this, the development as well as the nitty-gritty details. I will tell you, Mr. Rifkin has either been my most or least favorite client to work with in the town, and I can't figure out which one it is, because every time the staff asked for something, I had nothing to do. He was like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. In fact, we submitted this case in June of 21. As you heard, we went to a neighborhood meeting in August of 21. Not a whole lot of neighborhood concern. We went through multiple rounds of preliminary development plan review, and we thought we were gearing up for a public hearing in the spring of 22. That's when the town created the Urban Design Studio and hired Alan Davis. So we went from having 3 pages of comments in our last submittal to 15 pages of comments because Alan is doing a fantastic job on behalf of the town relative to urban design. And instead of my client saying, oh my gosh, we can't deal with this, we were getting ready to go to public hearing, Eric said, no, this is great. Let's work with them. Let's figure out a way to make the plan a better plan. And that's exactly what happened. And a lot of the components of the plan that you see before you tonight are really a product of a very collaborative effort between Halley Companies and the Urban Design Studio and Alan, as well as Rob and the rest of the team, to make it a plan that fits with what Cary wants to see, not only from a destination center standpoint, not only from a special planning area standpoint, but from what the town is starting to see from a quality of mixed use standpoint. And I think that the plan really does that. As you recall, this site was a portion of the sites that came to you all in the work session that you had back in December. And this is kind of the mixed use district. If you recall, the 3 parties that are involved there, Duke Health, Belcanto, and Halley, all got together and said, hey, let's figure out what does the special planning area say, and let's figure out who's doing what. And it's a really unique opportunity, as we talked about back then, to make sure that what gets entitled here is in fact consistent with what the town wants to see in the Cary Community Plan. This is a portion of that mixed-use district. And so what you're seeing tonight is essentially the embodiment of what was presented to you back in December. As Rob mentioned, the site is proposing vertically integrated mixed use up along the Green Level West corridor. Those are pods 1, 2, and 3. Pod 1 can't have any residential. That's going to be an office pod with potential for commercial on the bottom, and then pods 2 and 3 will be residential. I think we're getting ready to restart the computer if we're not careful. But with residential above retail in pods 2 and 3, and then the possibility of doing the same in pods 4 and 6. As it relates to kind of the conditions of the case, it really kind of has everything. You know, it's got 100% structured parking, which I can't believe that was an agreement that they did. But again, that's the embodiment of the urban design that they really are trying to achieve here. And that is they don't want to have, a lot of surface parking, unnecessary surface parking. Obviously, there's a commitment with respect to workforce housing that's consistent with what the town has seen in other cases. There's a commitment to green infrastructure as part of the plan. There's a commitment to providing cycle tracks, which again, kudos to the town and the town staff for saying, hey, this is a priority of the town. Let's figure out a way to make it happen here. You know, it really kind of checks a lot of the boxes that I feel like the town has been looking for. And I have got a client who has been listening to everyone in the process, maybe not so much me. I'm always looking for something to argue about because they have really done a good job. The last thing I want to talk about, and I think, beautiful, I did it. I want to talk a little bit about the linear park that's been designed into this plan. I mean, in Halley's mind, this is the core of the development. It ties everything together. It just, it doesn't just function in a way that allows for traffic to kind of make its way through the site. That linear park is designed to be the primary public gathering area for the entire development. By way of scale, Mr. Wilson mentioned the fact that this is 60 feet wide and the one at Fenton is 50 feet wide. If you're familiar with the one at Fenton in front of where the theater is, the total acreage of that green space, which is a dynamic green space, it's a really well done area, that's a little less than a half an acre. The linear green space that's part of this project is over 1.5 acres, or roughly 1.5 acres. So this is about 3 times the size of that green space that's in the middle of Fenton. And it really will serve as the opportunity for folks, whether they're living there, whether they're shopping there, whether they're working there, to get out and experience this mixed-use area. As was mentioned, there's jewel box retail, which is definitely a term that existed before the last 2 years. But there will be jewel box retail in that linear park to be able to provide, complementary services. But ultimately, I can't give enough credit to the Urban Design Studio and the work that was done by Mr. Davis, Mr. Wilson, and the rest of the team, as well as my client. We're excited to move forward with this. We're excited to be the first project that kind of gets out of the review process in the Green Level West Destination Center, and look forward to you all's feedback and continuing through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. So now's the time for the public hearing for 21 REZ Veritas Green Level Destination Center PDP, and I'll call on the town clerk to advise us of any call-ins, registered speakers, and previous speakers, or written comments.
We had 2 written comments for this public hearing. The first one from Lisa Mead, who suggested the following: affordable housing requirement be included, extending existing sidewalk, increase transit opportunity, and create a right turn lane on Green Level West Road. The second written comment was from Matthew Mead, who requested improvements for bicycle and pedestrian access to the area, including asking council to consider connections of surrounding greenways and bike paths to the White Oak Greenway. And that concludes our written comments, and we had no registered speakers.
Very well. If anyone is in attendance that would like to speak, now's your time to speak at the public hearing.
I have a loud enough voice, I could probably do it without the mic.
Can you move to your left, please? Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Mayor and Council, and Rob Wilson, who I've talked to numerous times.
Could you give us your name for the record, please?
Kelly Jackson.
Thank you.
KC Farm Road. So I'm to the left of number 3, and one of the 5 existing houses that are there. So I had a couple questions that the neighbors have sent me as kind of the spokesperson tonight. Is on, I guess it's Street D, what kind of buffers will be in place to provide some kind of structure to, I guess, shield for a 4 to 5 story housing development that will overlook the existing residential home? And then my second largest, and I don't know how the council can help, and this is just a concern already, is the traffic along Green Level. It going to 4 lanes when I'm already having to cross 2 lanes to get to my mailbox and back. It's like playing Frogger every day. So I have already gone to the Postal Service to ask if they can move the mailboxes, which they're like, no, we can't do it. I don't know what else to do. Don't know if there can be support from the town of Cary to say, once 4 lanes go in, we need to move the mailboxes to the existing side of the neighbors. So that's my 2 main concerns. I love growth. I was very supportive of the Greenway, have loved it since it went in, would continue to love kind of some new development, as well as potentially being one of the other 5 for maybe a phase 2. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Ms. Jackson, I think Mr. Wilson and or Mr. Barron could answer your first question. Regarding the second question, I have no idea. Postmaster General is not very responsive to us in the past. I don't know if Mr. Wilson has any comments about that.
Oh, Mayor, that's been my experience too. We don't deliver the mail, and we've generally, historically, not been too successful at influencing how the post office chooses to do what it does. So.
Before we get further with you, I need to ask and see if there are any more speakers.
Absolutely.
And close the public hearing, but thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing or bring back Mr. Wilson and open it up to council members for questions or comments.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Seems to be a discrepancy on the executive summary and what was presented. How many hotel rooms are there proposed? Because the executive summary says 150 and your slides say 125.
I believe the correct number is 125.
Okay.
We'll make sure that we clear up that discrepancy before this comes back to you.
0 to 125.
Correct.
The max of, right.
Right.
Also, it mentions a hotel on this property. Didn't we approve a hotel across the street as well for 250?
The Duke Health
Duke
approval does include an allocation for a hotel, and it could be on either the north or the south side of the street.
Okay. And then the last question I had was the recommendation for the destination center said that recommended 4 to 7 stories. Yet, is it true that this particular rezoning is requesting 4 to 8?
That's correct.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments?
I have questions and impressions. First of all, is there still going to be a pedestrian tunnel between this property or the Duke's property to the north?
The Duke Health rezoning, the adjacent Duke Health rezoning does include such a condition.
Okay.
There is some language here that if that, as you exit the tunnel and head south, ultimately looking to connect to the Greenway, there is some language that if that path needs to be shared between the two properties, that could occur.
Okay, so just to understand, it will not be coming across Green Level West Road adjacent to this property, but to the one that's to the east?
That's correct. It's the actual tunnel location is just east of the
Okay.
eastern property line for this site.
Okay, all righty. And is there any kind of buffer? It does not appear that there's any kind of buffer between that road that's in yellow, that north-south road, and then the property to its west. Is there any kind of buffer or screening there?
There is no buffer proposed at this time. There was a lot of discussion between staff and the applicant. If there were a buffer, it could function as a spite strip at such time when the remainder of the destination center comes along. And the thought was that that could be very counterproductive to the long-term, development of the destination center. So,
Okay, so the idea is we don't put a buffer in because we think the land to the west is going to develop.
and then that leaves them with the ability to access the street and, create an active realm, just as Viridis is proposing to do. Whereas if there were a buffer that were placed there and that was under the ownership of this property owner, that could be problematic when the adjacent developer, if someone were to come in and propose development of the adjacent property or assemblage of properties.
So you can't put in a buffer until that happens and then say this buffer is in existence until development to the west, and when that happens, then this is converted to
The
streetscape plantings.
We can certainly take a look at that issue and follow up with you as part of when the staff report returns.
Okay. I was a little disappointed to know that the minimum or the commercial would be 12,000 to 20,000 square feet. That's for the whole property, is 12,000 to 20,000.
That's correct.
So help us understand kind of like what that equates to. It's like shoe boxes, or how big?
I'm going to see if the applicant, if Mr. Barron would like to speak to their development program.
While he's coming down, I can ask other questions.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit why they need this waiver on the retaining wall to 10 feet, because, I have kind of like a sticking point about the safety of that.
Well, as you know, stormwater facilities are the only place we actually have a maximum height on retaining walls. And they're looking for a little bit of flexibility where the walls would not be visible from a street or a greenway, whether public or private. And they're just looking to, I think, have a little more efficient use of space in those facilities while still providing the intended environmental function.
Okay.
And then in exchange, they're looking to provide a limitation across the rest of the site where normally there would be no limitation. So.
Okay. I think I'll just reiterate my position on this. I think tall retaining walls are a safety threat to children especially, but to other people as well. And I know you say, well, no child's going to play next to that retention pond, but I don't believe it because I was a kid and I would have. So it's not for aesthetics that I think that we should have that step back. It's for safety. So whether it's seen or not, I think it's an important element. And then my last real thing that kind of stuck out at me, well, actually two, utility wires were 980 feet, linear feet. And then once Duke is added, then we have how many feet? I mean, not Duke Hospital, will Duke Energy be looking at this and looking at them in total and saying, yeah, you exceed the 1,000 feet, we can bury these lines?
We're certainly hoping that's how it plays out. Utility lines really are a development plan detail until you begin to put together construction details. But it's the staff certainly hopes that that would be the desired outcome, that the destination center frontage along Green Level West Road has underground utility lines, and that's what we're going to be doing our best to work towards.
Okay, and then so my last thing before Mr. Barron comes up, the cell tower. Generally, how tall is a cell tower? I mean, we're having buildings that could be potentially 8 stories high.
Mm-hmm. Usually cell towers are typically anywhere from about 110 to 160 feet. They vary depending on the number of carriers. I don't know the exact height of the one located on this site.
Okay, I didn't know if it was an option to move it to on top of one of these tall buildings so that we don't have just the standalone.
That might be a good question for the applicant.
Yeah. Hey, applicant.
Yeah, I want to hear the answer to that one.
I'm going to start with the first question related to the amount of retail. The typical retailer in a location like this, in a vertically integrated mixed-use location, for like a boutique salon or something along those lines, is about 1,500 square feet. They range anywhere from like 12, sometimes up to 2. Periodically, you'll see a restaurant expand into 3. If you've been to M Sushi over at Fenton, that's far smaller than 1,500 square feet. And so the long and short of it is they feel like 22,000 is an appropriate amount to allow for roughly between 12 to 15 retailers along that linear park to create kind of that active realm that they're looking for.
Okay, and that's their intent, is to line that linear park with first floor non-residential.
That's right. Yep, because again, that's where they see kind of the focus of activity being. And you can't park anywhere else other than in the parking decks, and that's where everybody congregates. So that's where they see the activation happening, is in that area.
Are they willing to make that a condition, that the buildings, all of the buildings will have their first floor dedicated to non-residential uses of some kind or something like that?
I can talk to my client about it. I may want to be careful about how we craft that, but I don't think there's any problem. We already have a minimum commitment with respect to vertically integrated mixed use in all of those pods. Where those go, I mean, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of burning desire to put them out on Green Level West Road, because again, there's going to be anywhere for people to park. This just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But we can talk about that for sure.
Okay.
And what was the question on the cell tower? Sorry, I was crunching math in my head, which really is a laborious process for me these days.
How tall is the cell tower that's there today?
I do not know the answer to that.
And the follow-up, it sounds like it's taller than an 8-story building. So the follow-up was, can you put it on top of a building?
We can certainly get some information on that and include that in the staff report when this comes back to you.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that tonight.
I have additional questions about the size. How big is the base?
Of the cell tower?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know anything about the cell tower at all.
Yeah.
Clearly.
So we're gonna have to get back.
Yeah, I can get back to you.
And I'm just going to ask the question, I'm sure I'm not the only one going, is it safe to live right next to a cell tower?
Is it?
I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I don't want to assume that.
So I've worked on enough deals that include cell towers to know that the cell tower companies will tell you that the way cell towers are designed, they're designed to fall straight down on top of themselves. They don't fall over and create harm for folks around them. So in urban settings, this is kind of what you end up with. The cell tower company has a lease. They have the right to be there, and we're kind of working around that fixed component. Now, oftentimes you can put them on the top of buildings. That creates some challenges associated with how you have to build that building. That dramatically increases the cost of doing business from a structural standpoint. But that's something I can certainly take up with my client. Could definitely get questions answered for you relative to the geometry of the tower that's there, and then we can follow up on that.
Other questions, thoughts?
I have several.
Okay, go for it.
I'm curious, I'm really pleased to see the 5% affordable housing in there and for 30 years. I'm curious, though, about the 80% AMI. I know when I was given a tour and got to talk to the, the Duke representatives and all of the developers considering this entire area, they said that it was really critical that the hospital staff be able to live within proximity of the hospital because that's a really big recruitment challenge. And I'm wondering if the typical allied staff at a hospital makes 80% of our area median income. So I'm asking if that's an adequate threshold. And I'm guessing it needs to be a little bit lower to satisfy what I heard to be one of the critical needs to have this, these residential units right there at the campus. So I just wanted to ask that question and maybe ask if we could, consider adding a little bit at that maybe 60 to 80% band. I think, you were talking about, a better mixed project here, and I think a better mix of incomes there might suit the purposes that they stated that this housing is really intended to serve. And I know, I was really moved by the presentation and the fact that they made a really good case for why we want these individuals working at this hospital and serving at the hospital to be able to live right there, and why that was super critical to that. So I wanted to share my thoughts on that. But I was really pleased to see that in there. I already asked about the cell tower, but I will say that, I've learned as the council liaison to the Public Art Advisory Board, they can make anything beautiful. So I do say, consider this if you do need to keep that cell tower where it is. As their liaison, I can promise you they would have some really terrific input on how you could make it the most dazzling cell tower ever.
We're picturing the Eiffel Tower as you talk.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, they're a great bunch, and they could make it something, instead of something to work around, they could make it something beautiful that's integrated into the project, and everybody's going to want to sell the tower in the middle of their project when they're done with it. So I'm actually being serious. They're really that good.
No, that's why it's funny.
Yeah. The separated bike lanes are fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And I wanted to ask about 50 EV charging stations for 1,300 units and 125 potential hotel occupants. That seems like a lot of fights over EV chargers to me. And I don't know if that's, maybe I'm just, I've been reading a lot about how we're going to try to move quite quickly away from gas-powered cars being sold as new, and I just wanted to, suggest that we consider maybe even just pre-wiring the deck to make it easier to add, and if that was, also included as something where it's just going to be, I think everybody's going to be happy they did it if it's done.
Or running conduit.
Yeah, that's the word. I say wire. Jennifer knows the right words, running. And I do want to ask a clarification about Pod 3. Is there currently residential directly to what I believe is the west of that? I know Ms. Jackson said she lives nearby. I'm assuming it's the same side of the road? I'm making an assumption there.
Yes.
Okay, so is there a planned buffer there?
There's a buffer is not proposed along the yellow street that you see here, but there is a buffer along the building that would be on Pod 4.
In Pod 4, okay. And why? Explain to me why no buffer in 3. That's the west boundary.
So that Street D is readily available for access by the property to the west if it were to redevelop in the future.
Okay, but that's currently a residential property.
That's correct. I believe there are 5 larger lot detached dwellings that are over there, and they have their own separate access road, which was KC Farm Road, the road that you heard Ms. Jackson speak about.
Okay. Well, I would think that with it being currently residential, unless somebody has said we want to sell our home, we might want to accommodate the residential area by putting up a buffer. I would think that.
Yeah. We'll certainly look to talk with the applicant and see what options there might be to serve both short-term and long-term goals.
And make sure you think about making that cell tower fantastic art, please. I'm hell-bent. Thank you.
Other comments?
Are we doing impressions now? Is that more questions? Anything you want.
Free-for-all.
It's a free-for-all. So I want to also thank the applicant because I think this is probably the most complete rezoning that we've received in a really long time. One that hits a lot of our hot buttons, like the environment, and it makes perfect sense. Veritas is Latin for green, so I'm glad green infrastructure is here. And I'm also thrilled, just like you, for 5% of workforce housing as well. And for 30 years, that hits some of our hot buttons as well. Of course, you know, being Lori Bush, I would love to see it 10%, and for 60% to 80% AMI, just like the last couple have been. It seems to be something that we'd all like to see. Another item I would suggest is if there's going to be 50 or whatever that number is for EV chargers, having an electric car as well, it'd be nice if some of the EV chargers are in the parking for the hotel. So just as it's great to have the EV chargers for all the people that live there, it's also great to have it for some of the hotel uses as well. If they're sharing space, that's great, but just think about the people who are driving here but actually not living there but staying in the hotel. The only other feedback I think everybody else already mentioned, I'm pretty impressed with the design guidelines, the jewel boxes. I was just at North Hills, the other side of North Hills this week, and got a sense of what it looks like to have 4 to 7 to 8 to actually 36 floors. And it had a very similar layout to this, and it felt like it could be home. And so I feel that they're really thoughtful, and I'd love to see even more as it moves on.
Other comments?
Love the collaboration between Bel Canto, Duke, and everyone involved in this. I think that is how this entire area in this center becomes a destination and something that you can tell was thoughtfully designed. And to design, I love design guidebooks. Ever since we started doing this on major projects with Fenton and others, it's fantastic. I mean, you can have pages and pages of words and words and words, but when you show somebody 6 images of what we're looking to accomplish and the designs that we're looking for, that, you know, what is it, picture's worth 1,000 words, it does it. It makes it easier for me to see what we're expecting versus what's being proposed out there. So that is awesome. I think the applicant's commitments to so many things, just it's so much of everything that we're looking for in all of these big projects. You know, the green infrastructure, environmentally conscious design. I would agree with the comments. Maybe 50 EV stations isn't enough, but this is by far the most anybody has come to before us and voluntarily offered. The community gathering, I love the little park strip in the middle. I do believe that is going to be a key gathering area. It's going to be the social place. It's going to be where people are hanging out. It's going to be the fun zone for this project. I actually echo your comments as well regarding the 60 to 80 AMI or something where it's not just 80, but 5% is actually entirely consistent with everything that we've been seeing before us.
The last one was 10.
Macedonia was 10 because it was entirely senior housing, and then they came back a year or two later, and in order to get to 4 votes was to go 10. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4 come in at 5. We've got 1 in the pipeline at 5 and 2 more at 4. So Macedonia is the only one at 10, which, you know, I'm not saying any of that's good or bad. Maybe 5's not enough, but it's entirely consistent. I share your concern regarding the stormwater, the high walls. I agree. If I'm a kid out there playing around and stuff, heck yeah, that looks fun, you know? If there's so much, but I also understand why they're trying to do it. You know, to avoid having a huge pond, they can kind of compact it, allow for water levels up and down. Is there something they can do to help assure us that it's not a safety hazard or something to help keep kids out of it? Love the structured parking. It's just an intelligently designed project. I mean, it's almost like Mr. Barron has been coming to our council meetings for a long time and heard all the things that are important to us. And it's like, wow, I don't know how this happens. But anyways, kudos to you guys and your team. Kudos to you and staff and everyone involved in this. To me, it's exciting. I can appreciate Ms. Jackson's comments regarding the buffer, but this, I hate to say it, but at the same time, I understand why not. I really do. Is the property to the west going to develop anytime soon? Maybe, maybe not. But it will. And you hate for it to become a disjointed project or something because, of well-intentioned, that ended up not being so good. So we also got some good comments from the Meads that submitted written comments, so I hope the applicant, read through those. They're pretty good. I'll leave it at that.
Other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Wilson, can you please navigate over to slide 75, please? And I will start off by saying that I echo the completeness of this. I really feel like this is a thoroughly thought out and thorough rezoning request. I mean, just about everything's been thought of. I do have some general concerns. The first of which is when we look at Cary as a whole, we have places like Regency, we have places like Weston. But when we look at the western part of Cary, we have no employment center. There's definitely a lack of employment out there. The idea in our Imagine Cary plan was for this destination center to truly be that employment center for Western Cary. One of my concerns in looking at as what is offered here is I feel like it's under offered on the office and commercial side and potentially over on the residential. What I'd really like to see from the applicant is possibly more of a commitment specifically on office and possibly less on residential. I just don't think that developing the minimum of the 120,000 office is really adequate for what we're looking for in an employment-based destination center. Now, I realize that this is one piece of an overall puzzle, if you will, that there's others coming in that could possibly make up for it, but being as this is the first, you kind of run into that potential of setting somewhat of a precedence, and we might end up with a lacking product of what we could get if we really focus on the office, which I think is really the goal of this destination center. The other thing that really jumps out to me is the buffer to White Oak. I feel like White Oak Greenway is a very unique greenway for those of you that have seen it, and it's a very ecologically sensitive area. I do commend the applicant that they did raise the buffer from a type B to a type A, which I think is great, but I'm not sold that 20 feet of type A buffer is really adequate of transitioning from this level of intensity to the White Oak area. That's something I would just really want them to possibly look into and see if there's any ways we can increase that buffering to provide more of a transition as we move to White Oak. Now, there is a lot that I will say that the request has going for it. Echoing a lot of the comments here, I really like the inclusion of the green stormwater infrastructure. I think this might be one of the first ones that have actually had some of these facilities, and I think that is great, again, given that you have this White Oak area directly to the south. Really commend the applicant for including that. One thing that I think that would be cool to see is when the Imagine Cary plan was being put together, one of the ideas for this destination center was the inclusion of green roofs. Ultimately, that was removed from the Imagine Cary plan, but I think this is a great opportunity for at least this development to have some type of green roof aspect to it. So just to kind of throw out there for the applicant, that I really think that would kind of have a lot of synergy with the other green-focused initiatives and conditions that are being offered here. I also like the vertical integration. Huge fan of that. I think if it's done well, it's done well. I mean, you look no further than Fenton to see a very good case of that, and I applaud the applicant for doing that here, and I really wish that we saw more of vertically integrated structures around Cary. Really looking forward to seeing how that will play out. But overall, again, very thought out, and it's again the design book, as was mentioned. I feel like anytime a design book or design guide is included as part of the rezoning, you really get a more architecturally sound product. So again, compliments to the applicant on doing that as well.
Other comments, thoughts?
I just, you bring up an interesting point about the employment, but also I think this is the seed that will draw that employment. And we do have the other available land. I'm just, presenting that as an observation. So that's it.
The land to the north will be residential. So I think that's a very fair point.
It is.
So that had not occurred to me, but I think that's a very solid point. And I really do like the idea of the green rooftops or activated rooftops. It's something that we've talked a lot about.
I've never heard that.
I know. But I was surprised you didn't bring Ryan brought it up. I thought I would just second.
I was expecting it.
Yeah, I was letting, that's your thing to bring up, so.
Well, he brought it up this time.
Yeah, good job.
Any other comments, questions? Yeah. I'll just add my feeling toward the AMI. As they were speaking, I was thinking an RN might be able to do 80% AMI, but not an LPN or any of the other staff that works at the hospital. I'm like, so they're driving in from somewhere else, and I don't think that was the intention. So anyway, talk to your applicant about that. If we could lower that, I think that would be a big difference. So thanks for bringing that up, Carissa.
Sure.
I didn't really register that strongly until you said it. And the only other thing I would ask Mr. Wilson or Mr. Stiegel, the concern about the post office is legitimate. I know the exercise might be futile, but can we at least try to see?
Well, I think I don't want to send the message to the post office. We think they care about citizens having to cross.
We're going
4
on
lanes.
record. We know they care.
Yeah, I don't want. I mean, they have no incentive if we assume that they're doing nothing. And I really believe that while we have no direct authority over it, that Rob's good at this kind of stuff.
Go Rob.
And I think that we'll be able to identify a sympathetic ear that will help us with this.
Okay.
That may also help them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to cross a relatively kind of-ish rural 2-lane to 4. So, but again, I'm not making any promises other than we will do everything we can to help you. Yeah, I knew I was on shaky ground with that one. But, we'll do everything we can to help you with the post office. And
all right. This rezoning proposal will go to our Planning and Zoning Board. If you have questions or concerns during that time, Mr. Wilson would be able to answer those. I'm sure Mr. Barron will work with you too. He has a great track record of working through a rezoning. And if you want to speak to council again, you can come to every single council meeting and speak, whether it's a public hearing or public speaks out, you have that opportunity. And of course, we're always available with emails and other ways of communication. So we invite you to come back if you'd like to come back and speak. And if you have any questions, we want to make sure we get those answers for you. Mr. Wilson, thank you for a thorough report. Really appreciate it. That was the last of our public hearings. We have no discussion items. No closed session. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Ah.